Hello, welcome to another top video. This is going to be a top 15 Batman stories that should be adapted into either a movie or at least turned into some kind of TV show in a way. And the reason I'm doing this is because, well, the last few Batman movies have been pulling for more than just one or two stories. Like, for example, Bad Blood is basically a very loose adaptation of at least 6 or 7 different stories. Um, one of whom happens to be on my list of top 15 Batman related stories, top 10. Um, and here are my top 15. Well, first, my honorable mentions. Mention is Dark Moon Rising. This I haven't had a chance to read yet, but from what I can tell from it, it sounds really interesting to me. It's written and drawn by Matt Wagner, which basically tells like a new modernization of basically of when Batman met the Mad Monk, who was a vampire. Yeah, I know this is like, oh, vampires, Twilight. It has nothing to do with Twilight. And here's the thing: the miniseries came out years before. Sorry about that. Years before the very first Twilight movie ever came out. But Batman has battled vampires on and off for years. So this is nothing new. The other one is basically like basically what was supposed to be kind of like Waves with a Joker. Like this is supposed to be like the first ever meeting between Batman and Dr. Hugo Strange. Yeah, but there's another one on the list basically that has that too. But I thought I'd bring it up as I'm gonna mention. Another honorable mention is Scott Snyder's Black Mirror, an awesome story, and I definitely think this one should be adapted at some point in time because it's got beautiful looking art by Jock, and I feel as though this could be easily adapted either into a possibly like they did with Dark Knight, with Dark Knight Returns, would adapt into a multi-part movie. In the case of Dark Moon Rising, I would say basically like 2 running miniseries. That's how I would put it when it comes to those 2 particular ones. For this one, either a multi-part movie. I would just multi-part movie, like maybe 3, because basically Black Mirror is like a 3-act story. You could basically have this split into like 3 parts, and I think it would work. All right. This one I feel is this is another Scott Snyder story. This one could probably fill it basically instead of like a 3-part movie. I would split up into a 2-part movie because of how good the storytelling is in here, and how much rich and how much Scott Snyder basically makes the city of Gotham an actual character in the actual story. Just like how James Robinson did it in his awesome Starman series, when he did it with Opal City. And how I would do this one, for Gates of Gotham, like 2-part movie. Like I said, I don't know why I said the same thing over again. All right, this one is not very surprised to people that I would like to see adapted, but some people think, why is this in your top 15 list? I didn't have room for it. That's my honest opinion about this one. This one I feel as though could be a season long, like because of how long the thing is. I would do it as a 12-episode miniseries, where I would have each episode a adaptation of each issue of the story, because the even though the mystery, obviously some people who read the story know who Hush really is, but people who never read the story before might be interested in picking up the story. Heck, you can even bring up the fact that it's based upon Batman Hush by Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee. This is possibly, and it's considered by far to be one of Jeff Loeb's greatest stories he's ever written. And yeah. And now, I think this one is another Jeff Loeb type story, but basically I decided to put both of them on here because because one story is a continuation of the other one, and that's Long Halloween and Dark Victory. Despite the fact Scott Snyder has already adapted Long Halloween to live action, this is basically one particular story that I've asked Sarah Heath about this, basically, what's Batman's story they would like to see adapted next, and they always point to this one, Long Halloween. I would also say definitely Dark Victory as well, because Dark Victory is a continuation of the same story, and it's done by the same creative team, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Tim Sale is the artist in the book, Jeff Loeb is the writer. And I definitely feel as though that this one basically should be adapted. Long Halloween is basically kind of like a modernization of the Two-Face origin story. Dark Victory is kind of like set in the early days of when Dick Grayson first became Robin. And plus, it's also a murder mystery. In the case of Dark Victory, I would suggest it's kind of the same thing with Hush. Do like a miniseries. Because Hush is like because Long Halloween is like 13 issues, 13 episode miniseries, and then follow up with Dark Victory. This will be 14 issues. Yep. Right. Number. Oh, sorry about that. Gotham's actually my number 14 on my list. My honorable mention, I forgot to mention this. Streets of Gotham, a great a great series basically where it just even though it's an anthology book because it has the Batman story and has backup stories with the series. This series has plenty of material to adapt from. I mean, you can adapt the first arc as simply like a movie. I mean, it's called Hush Money, and it even has basically the story where Hush basically, where he surgically redoes his face, basically where he's posing as Bruce Wayne. Now, if you have a story basically where Bruce Wayne is missing and you need a stand-in, this story would be perfect for it. And the other stories definitely can be used for adaptations of like you can make it kind of like an anthology type TV show, but the comic itself only lasted 21 issues. But you could do basically a regular like what could be like a season long arc, but I would not have it 21 episodes. No, I would have it probably a little bit longer, maybe like 30 or 40 episodes long. But I would try to adapt everything, like most of the stuff that's in these stories. But I would also try to adapt the back stories. Like there's also Manhunter, who is Kate Spencer. Yes, she showed up on air. I know that. There's also a Ragman story and a Two-Face story. Heck, the Joker himself shows up in the series as well. And plus, there's another character piece for Hush. Alright, moving on to number 13. A Grant Morrison story. Batman R.I.P. This one, I do feel as though you could do a movie out of, because it's a very well-written story, and it's considered to be one of Grant Morrison's best Batman stories ever told. Despite that, Batman and Son is an okay story in some people's. I actually kind of like the story of Batman and Son, but that's already been adapted. So, what other Grant Morrison stories should be adapted? Like, what should be next? R.I.P. could be a good one too. I mean, it's basically Batman's last case before his apparent death at the hands of Darkseid Final Crisis. This story would be absolutely perfect for an animated movie. You could keep. I would basically make the movie longer than, because generally the animated movies tend to be about an hour and about 15 minutes. Because it's a long story and it has a lot of material to it, I would split up into at least a 2, maybe 3-part movie, just so you can spread out the story a bit and try not to cut corners, per se. Like some people think that the people behind the first 2 Batman movies, they didn't technically cut corners with having Bad Blood. They kind of did, but not as bad as they did with Son of Batman and Batman vs. Robin. This one, do not cut corners with the story. It's beloved by a lot of Batman fans. People, even people who don't like Grant Morrison that much, they enjoyed this particular story. And I'm not that big of a Grant Morrison fan yet. I like his work. I really do. And this story will be actually perfect for an animated movie. I mean, it feels basically, or you could do like I said, did with Long Halloween and Dark Victory, a miniseries. It would work. Depends on basically if Warner Bros. Ever allow it, or or even DC. The next one is another story that I think a lot of people love to see on screen, or at least this particular story. I feel as though could make a sort of like sort of a long running TV show in a way, an adaptation of this Batman Nightfall. Even though the story is really long and it was published over the course of a year, there's a lot of material here. Kind of like with some of the other stories I mentioned here. This one I feel as though you could do as a probably more as a limited series TV show. Like you can probably do this as, I don't know, maybe a 3-season story arc. Like you can have this going on for three or 4 seasons, and then just wrap it up, so like that. This would be perfect for TV. It's just that I don't know if anybody's interested to do a Batman TV show, but this particular story, I do feel as though basically it should be adapted at some point in time. Even though it's been loosely adapted for Dark Knight Rises, but the thing is, this is a better Bane story than Dark Knight Rises, and that's the true. All right, next one is basically kind of like what I did with number 15. And it's Batman Cataclysm / Aftershock / Road to No Man's Land / No Man's Land. The reason why I include those other ones along Cataclysm, like this is basically kind of like a four-act story in a way. Though No Man's Land is much more longer than that. This one I feel as though you could, like with Nightfall, you can do this as part of a TV show. I wouldn't necessarily say a movie per se, but I would definitely see a TV show. There's plenty of material here to use. And if you read the actual stories themselves, DC is now collecting the Road No Man's Land stuff because they've already recollected. They did No Man's Land, then they did Cataclysm. Now they're doing like the in-between stuff because for years, like the stuff between Cataclysm and No Man's Land, those stories remain like just unpublished for years. Until this past October, they released The Road No Man's Land Book 1. Well, Volume 1 anyways, where it adapts the Aftershock stuff. Basically, the stuff that comes like immediately right after Cataclysm. And Book 2, which is going to be coming out, I believe, this month, that one's going to adapt the Road to No Man's Land stuff. Basically, the stuff from where Aftershock leaves off, and it leads directly into No Man's Land. Yeah, this one was definitely perfect. I would say part of a multi-season TV show, definitely. And it would work. Alright. Next one is something that could fit regular as a Batman movie than a TV show. And this is Batman Sword of Azrael. This is that movie you can definitely use to sort of introduce the character Azrael. But I would use John Paul Valley, not Michael Lane, because John Paul Valley is the Azrael in the story, not Michael Lane. So if you're going to bring Azrael to the small screen, like let's say in a direct-to-DVD anime movie, use John Paul Valley, not Michael Lane. I know Michael Lane was used for the Arkham video games, but John Paul Valley came first. And this one, kind of like they did with Bad Blood, just have Batman there and have basically Azrael be introduced in the movie. You could do a similar style to that, but I would not necessarily like put Damian in the movie because there's no Robin in the story. It's just Batman. It's the even though it's the introduction of Azrael in a way, but I would definitely just have Batman himself in the story. You could put Alfred in the story if you want to, along with Jim Gordon, but Damian is not necessary in the story. Neither is Nightwing. I mean, yes, you have the voice actor. You don't have to have him. I would just pick a different voice actor. This is one particular story. You don't have to have Robin in at all, because if you read the original story, I highly doubt Robin himself shows up in the actual story at all. Even though the story itself is sort of like one of those preludes into Nightfall, but this one could function much more as a movie than a little bit more than a TV show in a way. But if you want to, if Warner Bros. Wants to have this one into a part of a new Batman TV show, I'm open for it. All right. Next, of course, is quite possibly one of my, in my personal opinion, one of the best Danny O'Neill stories ever written. Batman Shaman. A story takes place during Batman Year One. It's sort of a supernatural type story, but it kind of basically fills in those gaps, like what Batman was up to during the Year One story. And even though the story is like 5 issues long, this one I feel as though you can do as a movie. Kind of like the way you did with Year One. Basically, have the same type of storytelling, have the same pacing in a way. You can cut little stuff here and there, but don't cut a whole bunch of stuff out and just fill in with some stuff from another thing. Just stick to the original story, but you can cut some stuff out. But cut like little pieces here and there. But don't cut major developments out of the actual story. And that's all I have to say on Batman Shaman. It's just a really good story. Next is another Danny O'Neill story, and that's Batman Prey. This one is another one of those first time meetings allegedly, though it hasn't been proven true. Batman Prey, which is the first meeting between, which is like when it was the Joker. Basically, it said like these 3 different stories are basically like Batman's first time meeting with the Joker. This is another one basically where he says this is the first time Batman met Hugo Strange in the current continuity. Not much else to say about this particular story. It's been a while since I've read it, but I do think this will function very well as a movie. And it comes like 2 arcs like right after Shaman, and it's part of the legend. And where do these stories come from? This one, Shaman, the Legends of the Dark Knight series. The series has had multiple different writers and many different artists, and I definitely do think this one would definitely function. So like, if you want to do like a series where it does tells Batman's early years, I would definitely recommend putting this one in there. Definitely. All right. Number 7. Sorry about that. This one is basically it's a 3-part story. It's a cross between Legends of the Dark Knight, Batman, and Detective Comics. It's basically another one of those type of stories which delves into the history of Gotham City. This one, movie, definitely movie, but I don't. It could be both. Nothing says it can't be. And this is another story by Danny O'Neill. Why am I putting some of Danny O'Neill's stories? Because the guy's a good writer. That's the reason why. He's one of my first favorite Batman writers. And this story would be absolutely perfect to do that. And plus, it's one of those stories that introduces the infamous Wayne Tower, which becomes an actual character in the story. And that's right. Next, of course, is the only story I have from the Shadow of the Bat series, which is The Last Arkham. This particular story is infamous for introducing Victor Zsasz and Jeremiah Arkham. This particular story, I would say possibly a movie, because the pacing of it, basically, you can definitely adapt this into a movie. If you want to put this into a TV show, fine, but I would just do a movie for this one, definitely. Alright, next is a story from Batman Confidential called King Tut's Tomb. It's a 3-part story. It's just basically just the introduction of King Tut into the DC continuity. Despite the fact that people are familiar with King Tut from the Batman 60 TV show, this is just a little more gruesome version of him, and he is a murderer who leaves clues very similar to the Riddler. And it's a great Riddler story in a way, where Batman teams up with the Riddler, and then afterwards I think Riddler goes back to jail. But yeah, definitely movie for this one. Alright. Number 4. A Scarecrow story. Cycle of Violence. I have reviewed this on my Comic Corner Classics / Non-Classics. And this one, I feel as though could make an action movie. I mean, yeah, you have to cut like little things here and there, but if you read the story, this could feel like an actual movie. You can set in any. You could probably set this in the because it's established in Dawn of Atlantis that Scarecrow does exist. This could be a great story you can use for a Bat movie. Just have this one story. Don't just cut corners and just fill it in with stories from fill in material from other stories. Just this one story. I know I had to keep harping on that, but Bad Blood basically had like 6 different stories. It was still a good movie though. Yeah, movie for this one. Best bet movie for this one. Okay. Same thing with that. It's considered to be, out of all Greg Hurwitz's stories that he did on the Dark Knight series, this is considered for a lot of people their favorite one because it's the Mad Hatter. He made the Mad Hatter very interesting. And the only thing I would cut off from the story, if you want to adapt it, just cut out the parts where they mentioned Damien's death. Because when the story came out, Damien had already died in actual storytelling, so they had to have a reference to that. But you can cut that out. I mean, there's other things you can't. I mean, it's not a main driving force of the story. It's just a continuity nod. That's the only reason why it's there. Just a continuity nod. And this is also a story you can use this one as a follow-up to Cycle of Violence, because if you read both Cycle of Violence and Mad, they kind of feel like, I mean, Mad does feel like a follow-up story, even though it comes right after Cycle of Violence. It feels like a follow-up story to that particular one, and it's considered to be the best Mad Hatter story. I mean, I wouldn't go far as considered the greatest Mad Hatter story ever told, because there has been that many Mad Hatter type stories ever told. But I do consider one of the best ones for Mad Hatter, definitely. But the problem is Mad Hatter's dead in the current continuity. Go figure. Well, he did the movie though, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, but he died. I won't tell how he died though. Next one is Batman: The Man Who Laughs. Now I know for a fact that Killing Joke is the next Batman movie to be adapted, next story to be adapted to the movie. This one I do feel as though should be adapted, because it follows like right after the events of year one, and you can use the same voice actor from year one. You can use this as sort of like a follow-up movie to year one. There's nothing that says you can't do that at all. I mean, it's just a one-shot. It's not like you're adapting like a mini-series or a long-running storyline. It's just a one-shot. And it's written by Ed Brubaker. I mean, this is the guy who did his awesome run on Captain America. And I know this guy's the other stuff, but this is probably by far considered to be one of Everybody's probably, I could consider one of his underrated stories, because when people think Everybody, people think of Captain America, Gotham Central, his run on Catwoman. Not much was run on Batman. People don't talk about that much, but his run was actually pretty good. He also got some of the issues he wrote for Detective Comics. And of course, so like Winter Soldier, Secret Avengers. I mean, basically, he's a little more known for his Marvel stuff than he is known for his DC stuff. But this is probably one of his underrated stories. And this one, definitely a movie. It fits for an adaptation movie. It's only one. It's like one standard issue. Shouldn't be that hard just to adapt this to the movie. My number one story to adapt into a, at least turn into an animated movie or a TV show, is Batman Lonely Place of Dying. The story that basically is the canon, because year 3 was retconned because of Zero Hour. But this particular story is the first, in a way, appearance, first canon appearance of Tim Drake. Basically, in how he first became Robin. Even though it was unofficial. But this movie, absolutely great to adapt into a movie. I know for a lot of people this is considered one of their favorite Tim Drake stories. In my honest opinion, I do agree with that. He is a very good story, and it is definitely one of my personal Tim Drake stories. But if you want to start somewhere with Tim Drake, start with this one. Don't start like one of his other stuff. Start with this story first, then move on to the other one. But aside from that, that's it for this top 15 Batman stories that should be turned into that could be turned into a movie or a TV show, or at least animated wise. Anyways, I'm not saying that should be live action, because that'd be like way too much budget. I'd say that animation probably better work for this one, for better. But my next one is top 15 Batman. My next top whatever is top 10 Batman related stories that should be turned into a movie or TV show. That's the next one. But until then, see you there. Bye.